Welcome to Cybersecurity Growth, a show for aspiring and existing cybersecurity leaders. I'm your host, Sean Valley, founder and chief strategist of Cybersecurity Growth. I'm also a musician here on Twitch and elsewhere under the name Music by SV, but more on that later. Welcome to episode number 25, Real CISO Problems. Why it's often a little C and not a big C. And Garrett has the day off, so it is just you at home and me today. I want to do a shout out to our new Twitch and YouTube followers since the last time we got together. Thank you for the follows. Let's see the first one here. Nivek Selig, thank you for that follow. Wild Beefwood, thank you for the follow. Levi Polo, thank you. CN4K, Cheeto Bandito. I'm a big fan of that name. I like Cheetos, and I'm a big fan of the band 21 Pilots, and a lot of times their fans are called Banditos, so Cheeto Bandito, big fan. Okay, this one here I'm going to destroy. Digo Joku, thank you for the follow. I tried. Legion01, thank you for that follow. And M. Bachme, thank you for the follow. So appreciate everybody who has followed us since the last time we got together. And I have paid attention that we have something along the lines of 200 followers on Twitch, 250 or 245 followers on YouTube. And then I'm watching the podcast numbers go up as well. So thank you for not only just the follows, that's kind of cool to shout out some names, but for those of you who are watching the shows live on YouTube or videos after the fact, I should say, on YouTube, or listening to the podcasts, thank you so much. Really appreciate you spending some time as we do this here. I'm in I guess I would say it's a different looking studio today. I would say it's a temporary look, somewhat of the exact same place that I'm normally at, but a slightly different look. The screen has a different look to it, the camera, the microphone, probably a slightly different sound. I'm in the process of working on a few things, and I've been making some changes to the studio. So what you see is really kind of a temporary setup while I'm working on things. Just for your awareness. Anyways, hopefully everything is looking okay, because this is a first time that I've tried this camera setup. Hopefully the sound is okay. It's the first time I've done this audio setup, and hopefully everything just looks fine with the lights in the room. The background is not the typical background. That will change next time we get together. Before we get into the show, just a heads up, we're going to do a couple things today. Primarily, we're going to focus on our hot topic about CISO problems. But before we get into the show, as we do on every episode, usually when I'm here with Garrett, but also when I'm here just by myself, you might be asking, hey, Sean, who are you wearing today? And I do have a shirt on that I've never worn before. The shirt says, as you can see here, I'll lean back a little bit so you can see it, Hackers Hate Us, Feelings Mutual. And the company over here on the side, Normalize is the company. I picked up how'd I get the shirt? I picked it up at Black Hat this summer. So I looked up Normalize. I haven't used their stuff before, so I don't really know it, but I liked the shirt. They state that they are a data-first security company helping enterprises discover, classify, and assess, remediate data risks across cloud and hybrid environments. So that's what Normalize does. But I like the shirt. Hackers Hate Us, Feelings Mutual. So that's who I'm wearing today. And now a word from our sponsor. This week we are sponsored by none other than Cybersecurity Growth. Is your business prepared for today's cyber challenges? At Cybersecurity Growth, we don't just offer consulting, we provide trusted, real-world expertise to protect what matters most to your organization. From cybersecurity assessments to strategic roadmaps, Cybersecurity Growth brings the expertise you need to turn security challenges into lasting strengths. We've helped companies navigate critical incidents and build strategies to reduce future risk. When a mid-sized tech company faced a data breach, we partnered with their team to contain the threat, restore operations, and implement measures to strengthen their defenses for the future. We're trusted by clients across tech, finance, and life sciences to provide the guidance they need to secure their business and safeguard their customers. Ready to protect your business? Visit cybersecuritygrowth.com/contact for a free consultation. All right, things we are going to get into today. If anyone is in chat and has topics you want to bring up, feel free to shout them out in chat. I will be paying attention as we do the show here. But I'm going to focus on today's hot topic. And the hot topic has been on my mind for quite some time. And there's been some recent news about it, so I thought I'd grab some news, discuss the topics, or bring up the news topics and then discuss them as I've seen them. So today's hot topic is real CISO problems, why it's often a little c and not a big C. And depending on where you are in the world, some people say CISO, some say CISO, and there's probably other pronunciations. All means the same thing. Chief Information Security Officer, CISO. So to get the conversation and the thoughts started, I grabbed a couple articles this week that I wanted to read some excerpts from and then talk about them from my experience and some friends who I've had conversations with on the topic. First off, this article comes from CSO Online. I actually have a couple from CSO Online, CSOonline.com. The author who created this article that I'm going to pull some pieces from is Evan Schuman, and it came out November 5th, so it is recent, relatively recent. All right, I've got a few different bullets I pulled from this article, and I thought they were just interesting enough to bring up and talk about. So the title is from Evan Schuman's article, 24% of CISOs actively looking to leave their jobs. So 24% of CISOs actively looking to leave their jobs is the title of the article. So let me read the first quote that I thought was super interesting in here. The combination of emerging threats, funding difficulties, and personal liability is increasingly convincing security leaders to seek new positions. The report said, adding that in addition to the 24%, another 50% claim that they are open to new offers altogether. The majority of security leaders would take on a new role if given a chance. So I've been in this role a few times. I've enjoyed my job as CISO a few times. There have been times where I've said, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe I don't have that right partnership at the C level, at the executive level. I generally think about, my approach to building security teams, and that's something that is important to me, kind of the building of a team, building of a program. Others may like the operational side. I'm a big focus on building. So I guess it's just an interesting take. I'll think more about that one. The next piece of this article, an analyst group, the Endural Group. The Endural Group sees the very nature of the enterprise CISO role as one with few incentives to stick around for the long term. As a result, he believes CISOs are almost always going to be actively exploring possible next moves, and not just because 77% of CISOs fear the next big breach will get them fired. So CISOs, paid pretty well. I guess it depends on who you talk to. Some may say they aren't paid well. I would say generally are paid fairly well, with a salary, with a bonus, depending on your company, maybe some equity in the company. Usually paid more than your average employee. But honestly, the pay is usually in line with whatever level they're at. Some companies, the CISO role is at the director level. And so you're paid similar to what a director would get. You get similar bonuses that the directors would get. If there's equity, you get similar equity that a director would get. Other companies, it's at the VP level. Other companies, it's at the SVP level. It generally depends on the size of the company. Thinking about the long term, I suppose in some cases we could think of it that way, as many of I I mentioned this at the beginning in the title. Sometimes CISO is spelled with a little c versus a big C. Often the CISO is not part of the official executive team. So the long-term financial incentives might be a little bit different for the CISO than they are for the rest of the organization. And I guess another thought around the kind of the long-term piece of this, maybe it has something to do with a CISO's background and desire, right? Some are builders, right? So you build the program from the beginning, and then you're like, okay, time to move on. Let's go build another program. Others are more operational type, where they say, okay, it's already been stood up. Let me help mature this thing a little bit and keep it going. Third bullet from this article that I thought was interesting. CSOs, Chief Security Officers, and CIOs, so a Chief Security Officer and a Chief Information Security Officer, depending on your company, is the exact same role. Some companies, the Chief Security Officer, some companies may have a CSO, Chief Security Officer, and a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, where the CSO is responsible for all things security, including physical security, as well as information security, as well as cybersecurity, and possibly other areas as well. In many cases, a company will have either a CISO or a CSO. But again, back to the article. It says CSOs and CIOs, Chief Information Officers, have relatively brief average tenures, typically running anywhere from 18 months to 24 months. Some enterprise CISOs last much longer, but as the 2-year anniversary approaches, many CISOs consider next moves. Well, I would say this in my response to that. My resume checks that box. My resume definitely checks that box. It's interesting. So they're talking about CSOs. It's interesting that CSOs and CIOs are kind of put together here. So, I often say Chief Security Officer or Chief Information Security Officer and the Chief Information Officer need to have a healthy tension to exist. And I truly believe it's really important that the CISO and the CIO do not report to one another, that they report somewhere else in the organization. Because if I think it's CIO, the head of IT, and the Chief Information Security Officer, the head of InfoSec, they have truly different missions. Right? CIO in their team is to build capabilities and have capabilities working for computers and software, and to have the business run with technology. Where the CISO's role is to secure things, and it's not focused by definition initially on usability and capability. Yes, there's got to be some balance, and that's why I believe it's important to have that healthy tension, and they really should not be in the same reporting structure. They should report separately up to someone else. It's interesting that CIOs and CSOs both, according to this article, have an 18-month to 24-month runway. I will say this, in my time as CISO, I've had one role that actually went beyond 24 months. It didn't make it to 36. I've had a couple other roles that definitely fell right in between these two numbers here. So it kind of checks out from my experience. I know I have friends out in industry who have been in their roles for 5 years and more, who have found something that's just the right fit for them, and they've grown with the company, and it's been a great match. It's also interesting in this article where it says enterprise CISOs last much longer. So if we were to think about what might define an enterprise, usually it's a really large company, right? Big companies, several thousand employees, maybe tens of thousands of employees. Maybe they last a lot longer. Maybe the org's a whole lot bigger. There's a whole lot more complexity to it. So you can spend some time in one area. Once you work through that area, you go spend some time in another area. And maybe it takes so long to learn the whole business of an enterprise that maybe they don't get bored, maybe they don't burn out, maybe there's just more opportunity. That's something to keep in mind. Take a look here at the second article that I found when I was putting the rundown together today. Similar topic. We're staying on the same theme here. Also coming from CSO Online, but this was created by Tyler Farrer, and this came out November 13th, so also relatively new. The title of this article is The CISO Paradox: With Great Responsibility Comes Little or No Power. Great responsibility comes little or no power. So much for the Uncle Ben saying in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, something like that. All right, I'm going to read a couple items here that I thought were really interesting from this article. So the first one says, for most CISOs, True command is often a frustrating illusion. They're tasked with guarding the organization's most sensitive information, but without the actual clout to make essential decisions autonomously. I've seen it myself. I've seen it with friends. And sometimes this is a very challenging one. Hey, if you think about the RACI model, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, right? So if you say that the CISO is accountable for guarding the organization's most sensitive information, in a sense, you're accountable for delivering the solution, but you don't necessarily have the power to make those changes. There's a paradox there. And that can be really challenging. And that's also something, if I think about a CISO, that would be really important for someone who is looking for a role, looking for a job, interviewing, to get an understanding of what is the responsibility of the job, right? Through interviewing, and then once understanding like what's the responsibility of the job, to then understand, okay, I understand what the responsibility. I understand what you're asking me to do in this role. What authority do I have to get that done? Right? So at least you can go into a role understanding that if you're tasked and someone says, the task is to ensure we never have any data breaches, I would then say you should probably find someone else because nobody can claim to do that job and I will, be set up for failure. If I think, if you think about the idea of someone saying, hey, the responsibility is to ensure that the sales team can sell our product to our customers, and our customers happen to be big businesses, and big businesses need some assurance that we're doing good security on our products and our systems. Okay, now I can understand that as well. So like just asking these questions, like what is the primary responsibility of my job? And some might say, the primary responsibility is to make sure that we get ISO 27001 compliance and SOC 2 compliance, that we are GDPR compliant at all times. So it might be a compliance focused role. And so, if that's officially the role, then you realize, okay, my job is to manage the program to a checklist, to a compliance framework. But then asking, okay, well, what's my authority? Like, how much authority do I have to actually get this done? To find out, do you actually have support of the culture of the business? Do you have support from the most senior executive team? Or do you not have support from the senior executive team and you realize, oh, my primary job is to figure out how do I get support from that team? Or maybe there isn't any type of security culture in the company, and you say, oh, my primary job is to build security culture. These are things that are probably really important to ask as you're figuring out if this is a job you want to take. What are you really asking me to do? And do I have the authority to do what you're asking me to do? Because there might be this opportunity to potentially shape, if you realize you're being asked to do a thing and you realize, oh, I'm not getting the authority to do the thing you just asked me to do, then maybe there's an opportunity to reshape the role before you accept it. Or maybe there's an opportunity for you to say, yeah, I know we've been having this conversation and things are going well, but maybe I should go work somewhere else. The next quote that I got from this article that I thought was interesting, which says, the concept of command, having control over decisions, resources, and personnel, is fundamental to effective leadership. All right, so this quote really aligns with what I was just talking about. And it specifically defines here, command means having control over decisions, resources, and personnel. So again, asking these questions before taking on a role. Do I have control over the decisions I need to make, right? Some decisions might be, let's go real world. Like some decisions are, hey, do the endpoints here, like desktop computers, your Macs and your Windows, do they have local admin access enabled? In many cases that didn't have a security culture or a thoughtful security program, the answer is going to be yes, local admin is enabled, or you'll get lied to and say, no, it's not enabled. It's fine. And then you'll find out it is. Local admin is enabled, and local admin is one of those areas where oftentimes bad guys find a way in, try to figure out how to take over your local admin account, and then do bad things on your local admin behalf. Having persistent local admin on your endpoints is a bad thing. Another simple one. We talk about multi-factor authentication ad nauseum on the show here. Do you have MFA everywhere? And you expect the answer to be yes. And more likely the reality is, well, yeah, MFA is on our Microsoft things and our Google things, but maybe it's not on our AWS things, and maybe it's not on our HR system, and maybe it's not on our whatever other systems. Understanding, okay, where you're going to identify where there's risks, and effectively CISO's role is to identify where there are risks and help the company reduce those risks to an acceptable level. So if local admins enabled on all your endpoints, these are great questions that you could ask like during interviews to show like your business and technical savvy. Is local admin enabled on our endpoints? Yes is the answer. Great. Will I have the authority to remediate that, right? To eliminate local admin, help the company come up with a different solution to allow people to install software and customize their desktop. And if during your interview, you come to realize that the answer is not a yes, that you're not going to have the authority to turn off local admin, maybe because your CIO partner is dead set against it and you report to your CIO, well, you're going to have a difficult time here. Maybe you will have that authority as part of the job. Some companies who are taking cybersecurity very seriously will look to you and say, you're, the authority on this role. You tell us what needs to be fixed. You tell us how to reduce risks, and we'll come to a thoughtful answer. Right? In this case here, I want to turn off local admin everywhere tomorrow. I don't want people to install software. Yes. So the CIO and the IT team hate the idea of this because it's going to break functionality for users. That's not my job. That's the CIO's job. There's that healthy tension, right? It's important to have that healthy tension. I actually think it's important to get that out of the air before you take a job. Like, hey, CIO, we're going to have healthy tension. That's how we need to work. I want local admin turned off. You probably want it on so people can install, the researchers and the developers can install software when they want. I need it off to protect us. So let's turn it off. And then let's figure out a solution to get software installed and configured on people's computers. Turn it off first. That's what I care about. You care about the other piece. Are you going to have that responsibility? Are you going to have that authority to be able to do that? Are you going to have the resources? That was the second thing from this bullet here, the resources. What's your security team look like? Are you a CISO and a team of 1? Are you a team of 100? Somewhere in between? Say we're talking about, we'll stick with local admin since I brought it up, right? Say you're talking about local admin. Do you have the resources to enforce the disabling of persistent local admin, right? So if we were to talk about, say, like a Microsoft environment, can you go into your Microsoft configuration tools and click the buttons to disable local admin on your endpoints? Push that out via your endpoint agent, your endpoint security agent. Do you have the say your big Mac shop and maybe you use Jamf to manage and configure all your Macs? Do you have the ability to go into Jamf and click a button basically that disables local admin or possibly changes the approach to eliminate persistent local admin? You probably right out of the box don't have that access because it's controlled by IT. IT wants to hold the keys to the kingdom. So how would you get that done? Great conversation to have before getting a job as a CISO, just to understand where you'll have those challenges. So from a resource perspective, do you have access to those tools? And if you do, great. Can I assign someone from the IT security team or the security operations team to go ahead and work with someone from the IT ops team to get this done, right? Can we leverage people resources to get these things done? Or is it the possibility that it's you versus the IT team, and the IT team is going to do everything they can to block and defend Jamf and defend like the Microsoft environments? So you can't get in there and make these changes in personnel, right? I was just kind of talking about the personnel. Do you have the people to be able to get this done? So the three things here in this bullet was the concept of command is having control over decisions, having the resources, and having the personnel. They are fundamental to any role in effective leadership. That's what comes from this article here, and I agree. I agree. All right, the next item, coming from the same article, a few more pieces here that I thought were really interesting. So this quote says, "For the CISO, this lack of command is more than a challenge, it's a fundamental flaw. CISOs get stuck selling the importance of security to their superiors." Okay. And there's an example here. Example. A CISO may recognize the need for advanced threat detection software or expanded staff training, but without command over budget or resource allocation, they can't implement these changes directly. Instead, they must justify the expense, convince stakeholders of its importance, and hope it aligns with other business priorities. This dependency undermines their ability to be strategic and forces them to constantly validate the necessity of their role. So CISOs getting stuck selling the importance of security to their superiors. This is a real problem. a very real problem. And that does sometimes get into the healthy tension story. If CISO comes in and they're realizing that their primary job is to constantly be a salesperson selling the importance of security, right? Here's the problem, right? Your job is to come in. If I think about, my role as a CISO, I'm here to identify risks, help educate the business on those risks, and help the business come up with thoughtful solutions to reduce those risks to some acceptable level. In many cases, I'm the person who helped the company understand what that acceptable level is, trying to get it to a level where there's a low likelihood of security incident. Identifying risks, helping a company understand, get to a level of reducing risk to an acceptable level. Obviously, be ready to detect and respond when something bad does happen. But if the CISO's role is primarily focused on selling the importance of security, so if you think about it, you're going to your leadership and saying, hey, I need $2 million to go build a managed detection and response capability to make sure we have cybersecurity insurance in the event we get a massive ransomware breach that's going to cost us millions of dollars to recover from. And then I also need an incident response retainer because the MDR vendor that we bring in, they're going to do a decent job of monitoring, detecting, and responding to security incidents, but I need a real incident responder when we get that high severity incident come in. And yeah, in the end, it might cost us a couple $1 million. Depending on the company. Smaller company, maybe it's $500,000. Larger company, it's $10 million. But it's because it's going to be in line with the size of the business. How much time do you need to spend convincing the company that they need to spend money on that? Are we talking you get in, you say, okay, I've done my security assessment. Here are the things we need to do. Here's how much it's going to cost roughly. Let's move forward. Do you get that buy-in? Do you get the buy-in during the interview of things that you need to do? But if you're already in the role, do you get the buy-in of this is what you need to do? Or do you have to go on a year-long sales pitch, PowerPoint deck after PowerPoint deck, research and evaluation to inform and educate the business, to sell to the business the importance of security? This is a challenge for many CISOs because security is expensive. If you don't really have that culture of hey, we need to secure the company, we need to secure our products, we need to secure the capabilities we provide to our customers, then you're going to continue to have a real challenge. And that example was a good one. Another bullet from this article here, even without full authority, CISOs still take the blame. At the end of the day, CISOs are held accountable for failures. When a breach occurs or a vulnerability is exposed, it's the CISO who bears the brunt of the blame. If you think about the definition of what a CISO needs to do, right? If you think about the definition of information security, the CIA Triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. In most cases, confidentiality and integrity are the key pieces that fall into the security team, and availability usually falls into IT and DevOps and tech ops. But still, it's still all there, because if you're a company that lives in e-commerce, you need to deal with the potential of your sites getting DOSed and DDoSed. So if a CISO is responsible for ensuring that a major vulnerability is protected, is not exposed, if a CISO is accountable, right? If they are accountable for ensuring there isn't a major data breach, yet they don't have the authority to address vulnerabilities or put protections in place because they're spending most of their time selling, or possibly because there's not that support from the top down, that they're spending so much time arguing with the IT team, the DevOps, the tech ops teams of why it's important to secure certain things, which is going to take capabilities away, but increase more assurance around company data and customer data. It is a real problem. And then the key piece here, that the CISO takes the brunt of the blame when something goes wrong, right? If you think about it, major vulnerability exposure that has exposed something of the company, major data breach, ransomware incident, data lost through email compromise, all of these things. The CISO is the one who's going to be reporting to the executive team, to the board, informing what went wrong, why it went wrong, and they're going to be ultimately the one who's answering the questions of why didn't you stop this? Why didn't we stop this? Is there a culture in place that embraces the fact that we are securing what we can, and we recognize that we won't secure all of the things? Or more likely, are folks going to be looking at the CISO and saying, why didn't you put these protections in place? And of course, the CISO who has been spending most of their time selling security to the business and not actually doing the security, there's a problem there. So I can see why this is written in this article. Let's see, the last item I grabbed from this article that I thought was interesting, it says, a visible lack of authority can erode confidence in the CISO. Without command, they can only advise, not enforce. If we go on LinkedIn and we see a bunch of CISO titles and resumes, it's not uncommon that I would see a CISO have on their resume, trusted advisor. Trusted advisor. I've had it on my resume before. I do believe it exists in some spots. But let's think about this. As a CISO, right, you have a C in your title. Maybe it is a little C and not a big C, but you have a C in your title. You have a chief role. It might be a small executive role, it might be a big executive role, but it's still a very important role. If you believe your role is to advise leadership, then you're not a CISO. I learned this through experience. It wasn't something I realized going to the job, but my job wasn't, yes, part of my job is to advise, right? I probably am the senior most knowledgeable person in a company to understand not the depth of security, because that's where the team are the experts there, but from a strategic perspective. And if you think of yourself, my primary job is to advise the leadership to their solutions of reducing the risk, you're not a CISO. Because, effectively, you need to help the company, you need to enforce the risk reduction, and you need to have that command to be able to enforce that risk reduction. And if not, if you don't have that authority to enforce a risk reduction, or maybe you think of yourself as a trusted advisor and you don't enforce that risk reduction, then what are you doing there? Because ultimately, you got to identify risk, you got to help the company understand what the risks are, and you need to help them reduce that risk to a lower level. And yes, most of the things that a CISO needs to tell the business to do and help the business do is going to take away some capabilities that already exist. It's going to make technical work a little bit more difficult because we need to shore something up. Even in the case of just patching, you go out and say, hey, I realize our Windows domain controllers haven't been patched in a year. They need to get patched. They need to get current. Well, the Windows team, actually we could maybe say like a Linux server hasn't been patched in a year, right? Some production Linux server hasn't been patched. Well, the Linux team, the ops team, doesn't want to patch the server. They don't want to take any downtime to patch, and they're not sure if any new components will be broken by patching that server. All we're trying to do is just get the server current so it doesn't, so that exposure doesn't get exploited, and we don't have so we don't have a security incident. And even something as simple as like clicking the update button on your Linux server or your Windows servers can be a battle, right? Does the CISO have the authority to say, no, this isn't a conversation? We're not having a conversation here. I'm not trying to give you some advice. What I'm saying is this needs to get done, and it's a year out of date, so it's kind of a high severity vulnerability. So you must hit that button by the end of the week, right, to align with our approach of high severity vulnerabilities, or whatever your approach is. So this quote here that I just read, the lack of authority can erode confidence in the CISO. Without command, they can only advise, not enforce. And those are the key things I wanted to talk about today with the hot topic, real CISO problems, why it's often a little c and not a big C. There's a lot more we can cover, but I grabbed these two articles. I figured I'd highlight a couple pieces that I thought were super interesting, give my own little commentary on these from my experiences and then conversations I've had with friends. We will be back doing some shows in the future, a couple shows we're working on for the future. We've talked about our resume workshop. We have now received 3 resumes. Thank you for those of you who have sent in your resumes. We're in the process of anonymizing the resumes, but we're not reviewing them ahead of time. We're anonymizing the resumes, and then we are going to bring them on screen. We're going to discuss them, and when Garrett and I are back, We'll look at it as security hiring managers, and we'll give some pointers as to where we think these resumes should be improved. If other folks want to send in their resume, you are more than welcome to. You can email your resume at support@cybersecuritygrowth.com, and we'll be looking for those resumes to come in. And in future shows, we'll do the same thing. We'll anonymize the resume, bring it on board, bring it on the screen. We'll discuss some of the topics. So we'll have our first resume review next time Garrett and I are back. Another future topic we are preparing for, the RTO topic, return to office. I guess it's kind of a hot topic that's everywhere. Now we're going into 2025. We're seeing topics everywhere, or seeing conversations everywhere of companies trying to get people back into the office 4 and 5 days a week. Here we are 4+ years going on 5 years out of COVID, still having this conversation. And we got more topics that we're working on. Well, let's wrap this puppy up for this week. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. If your company would like to become a sponsor of Cybersecurity Growth, become a sponsor of the show, the Cybersecurity Growth show, you can reach out to us at sales@cybersecuritygrowth.com, and we'll have someone take a look at that and reach back out to you to see if we can make something work. I'm Sean Valley. I'm the creator of the show and the music here on Cybersecurity Growth. You can check us out at cybersecuritygrowth.com. You can find all of the shows, both in video and audio form, at cybersecuritygrowth.com/blog. You can find me on most of the socials under my name at Sean Valley, or under at Cybersecurity Growth. If you like the show, please tell your friends. If you hate it, please tell all your adversaries. Let them know that you're advising them that you hate the show. If you could like and subscribe to the show wherever you're watching or listening, possibly leave a 5-star review, say something like, "Great show, I learned something to help me in my future CISO career." This week, we covered real CISO problems, why it's often a little C and not a big C. We are generally live on Twitch every other week, Fridays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. GMT, and then in your pod feeds a few days later. I want to thank you for joining me on today's episode without Garrett, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody.